Hi, Kim O'Rourke here. So in a previous video, I showed you how to attach binding to the right side of your quilt. So if you needed to see both sides of your quilt, you want invisible stitching both sides of your binding. But what if it's a wall hanging or something that's you're not ever going to see the back of it? Well, you can be a bit freer with that one, and it's just a little bit faster too. So we're going to start in exactly the same way. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to attach the binding to that. So let me switch cameras so that you can see. So here we are. So I've got the edge of my quilt here. And as I've said in my previous video, I always start and finish at the bottom of my quilt. That's just so that the final join is just at the bottom where nobody's really going to look. So same thing applies. I'm going to start with my binding strip open. So I've created all the folds. I've made my binding, I've created the folds, and I'm just going to do a little fold over the top. It's about 1/4 of an inch. It doesn't really matter, it's just to hide that raw edge. And I'm going to start this time from the wrong side of my project. So if it was the wall hanging, it would be the back of the wall hanging. And the reason for that will become very clear. So I'm going to start about halfway along the bottom edge of my quilt here. So I start this attaching. If you've watched the previous video, this little bit looks exactly the same, and it is. Let's get that thread out of the way. I'm going to pin that down. Raw edge to raw edge. Do that up there. All right, so we've got that fold there, and we've pinned this raw edge to raw edge on the wrong side of our quilt. So we've started on the wrong side. So I'm going to pause this video, I'm going to get my sewing machine, and we're going to stitch this into place, and I'll show you how to attach all of it. So 1 second, I'm going to pop out by magic and pop back in by magic. So magic of technology. So I've got my binding on the wrong side of my project on my machine underneath my walking foot. I've got the needle pretty much in the central position, and well, it is in the central position, and I've got my stitch length at 3.5 because we've got quite a lot of, oh sorry, that was the camera I knocked. We've got a lot of layers to get through here, so we need a slightly longer stitch width. So I'm going to line this up here. I'm also going to get my glasses because otherwise it's impossible to see. Right, you were at that age as well where reading glasses suddenly become an essential in your life. And you think, I really could actually read the back of this tin, but I can't anymore. I don't know what happened. So I've got this fold here, the outer fold is lined up to the central position on my walking foot, and I'm going to start stitching there with a lock stitch. So I'm going to put my needle down and just adjust my foot because it all seems to have run away underneath the table here, and I'm going to stitch down there. Okay, get these pins out of the way. Okay, so I'm sewing on that fold line. Let's just do a little bit further. Okay, so I'm going to finish there, but you would go all the way around of your quilt, doing the mitered corners, and do watch my video for how to do perfect mitered corners if you're struggling with those. I've broken it down into little tiny steps for you, so watch that as a separate video. But what we've done now is attached our binding all the way around to the back of our quilt. And if you have watched the previous video, what we do with our tail end here is bring it over into this section here. And let me turn this around because this is a sample piece I've been using for my video. So I'm going to show you. This is all behind the scenes video here. So if you look here on this bit of the binding, so we will have attached this. This is the bit that we've just done, but this is on the right side of the fabric. So we've just attached ours on the wrong side, but we do it the same way. So when we come around with our tail, we've overlapped our nice neat edge, and then when we fold it over, we would have hidden that raw edge within the binding there. Do you see? Okay, so you go all the way around, you do your mitered corners, and you finish your tail, and you overlaps into here. So let's go back to the bit that we're working on, if I can find it. So we're here. So we're on the wrong side of the fabric now, and I have sewn along there. I might have my tail popped in here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it over. So just like we do from the other side, I'm going to fold it over, and I'm going to fold it over again. So this is the back of our quilted project. And if I switch it over to the front, you'll see our stitch line here. We want to be covering that all the way along. So I'm going to make sure that that raw edge has disappeared. Let's get all those folds in, because fabric does like to move around. Got a bit of a mind of its own. I'm going to stick a few pins in there. So I'm going to pull that down just over the edge of my quilt. I'm going to do that all the way along so it's pinned down, covering my stitch line. And then, because this is now the front of our project and the back is not going to be seen, we can stitch down the edge of that. Now you want to stitch as close to the edge as you can. So I don't know, I'm about 1/8 of an inch away. Still using my walking foot. I'm going to start with a little lock stitch. And you want this neat because you're on the front of your project now. So you want this line to be nice and neat. So use your walking foot to guide your needle as you go down to make sure you've got a nice straight edge. Apologies in my excitement. Not the camera. So I'm using my foot here to give me a guide. I'm going to do that all the way around. So let me show you that bit. So can you see I've got a nice neat top stitch going all the way along. So this will be the front of my project. So if you're careful and you do a nice neat line, you could absolutely do a contrasting thread if you want to. Depends on your design. You may want to do a thread that disappears into the binding. It's the same colour of the binding. If we turn it over, what you can see is the stitch line may or may not show. So sometimes it appears on the binding on the back and sometimes it misses it. This is why when we're making a quilt where we're going to see both sides of it, sorry, take these off. If we're going to make a quilt where we're seeing both sides of the binding, we don't want to be seeing any stitch lines, which is why we do a slip stitch on the reverse. But on something like this, where it's a wall hanging, where you're not going to see the back of it, we can get away with doing a stitch line all the way along there and top stitching it so it looks nice, it gives it a nice finish, and you can attach it like that. Of course, if you want to slip stitch it down and do it with invisible stitching, so if you're doing a wall hanging and if you want to attach from the front and slip stitch the reverse, you can absolutely do that too. But it's just to show you there's a quicker way if you're doing a project where you're never going to see the back. So hope that has helped. So if you watch all the videos together, you'll start building up a picture of what to do in each circumstance and how to do those mitered corners as well. So I hope that's helped, and I will see you in my next video. Bye for now.